But here we are starting to see the trial of Boromir really starting to take shape. Frodo reminds us in the next paragraph that though Boromir said something similar about it being folly to throw the ring away, he accepted Elrond's correction. But here, hello everybody, welcome to Aude and Tulva, where we are walking our way through Tolkien's Legendarium. Today we are starting chapter 8 of book 2, Farewell to Lorien. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You'll find a few of my favorite versions, different price points linked in the description, and memberships are open if you'd like to support the channel and what we're doing here that way. All right, let's dive in. But before we dive in, I have a special giveaway for you. Lord of the Rings Rise to War wanted to partner with the channel to help foster a sense of fandom and promote Middle-earth, and of course, give away some money. So what's the deal? It's pretty simple. You'll have until October 4th to leave a comment below on this video, and since we're in Farewell to Lorien today, answer this question. Which Middle-earth cuisine would you most like to try, and why? Just answer the question, add the hashtags Middle-earth cuisines and Lord of the Rings Rise to War. It's simple. And don't worry, I'll put all of this in the description below. After October 4th, I will pick 4 winners and comment on their comment to let them know. Each winner will need to respond and email me within 24 hours of being made aware that they've won. If you don't respond, then I'll have to pick another winner. Each winner will get $25 via PayPal from Lord of the Rings Rise to War. And that's it. Once everyone has responded to me with their PayPal information, I'll make a video announcing the winners. Thank you, Lord of the Rings Rise to War, for sponsoring this giveaway. All right, let's dive into the chapter. Just a little while after Sam and Frodo look into the Mirror of Galadriel, the whole company is summoned to Celeborn and Galadriel. It seems Frodo's impression that it was time to leave was correct. As usual, Galadriel lets Celeborn lead. Now is the time, he said, when those who wish to continue the quest must harden their hearts to leave this land. Those who no longer wish to go forward may remain here for a while. But whether they stay or go, none can be sure of peace. For we are come now to the edge of doom. Here, those who wish may await the oncoming of the hour till either the ways of the world lie open again, or we summon them to the last need of Lorien. Then they may return to their own lands, or else go to the long home of those that fell in battle. Now, I think we can imagine how hard it is for some of them to leave Lorien. This was the first place Aragorn could feel, could sleep and feel at peace without fear in almost a month. Legolas no doubt found kinship here with other elves, and he and Gimli started to become friends. It's interesting to me that Celeborn offers to let people stay there, though. Although Aragorn would probably wish to stay there, I feel that they would know him well enough to know that he's going to do what he has to do, go on no matter what, as that's his purpose, is, well, the prophecy over his life. He used the word doom again in the way we know Tolkien used it, a decision, verdict. But even those of the company that would stay would be summoned to fight. So even in such a place, they would not find peace. He wants to make sure they know that. Either the world changes or they have to fight. But all of the company decides to move forward, at least according to Galadriel. I'm still a little fuzzy on how she's reading everyone. I know we talked about Osanwe Kenta and how it has to be consensual, but do the members of the company really have the capacity to give it, other than, Aragorn, Legolas, and maybe Boromir? I don't really know, but I'd love to hear what you all think about that. Leave me a comment. I love having these conversations with you guys. Now, Boromir speaks up as he seems a bit eager to be leaving Lorien, and he's going home to Minas Tirith. That is true, said Celeborn, but is all this company going with you to Minas Tirith? We have not decided our course, said Aragorn. Beyond Lothlorien, I do not know what Gandalf intended to do. Indeed, I do not think that even he had any clear purpose. This is clearly a spot where they all miss Gandalf, especially Aragorn. So let's recap Aragorn's motivations here for a second. In The Ring Goes South, Aragorn states he will go with the company because your road and our road lie together for many hundreds of miles. And though Arwen chose to be betrothed to Aragorn, Elrond still says this in Appendix A. Maybe it has been appointed so, that by my loss the kingship of men may be restored. Therefore, though I love you, I say to you, Arwen Undomil shall not diminish her life's grace for less cause. She shall not be the bride of any man less than the king of both Gondor and Arnor. So he never planned on leading the company. It was always going to be Gandalf. Aragorn was going to reclaim his lost kingdom. He just happened to be along for the ride for a while. And because Gandalf and Aragorn had different ends in mind for their respective journeys, I doubt Aragorn was really thinking and planning the path of Sam and Frodo. And if that's not enough, I bet Aragorn was further encouraged to go to Minas Tirith after hearing of Boromir's dream regarding the blade that was broken. All these signs are pointing him to the fact that he needs to go to Minas Tirith. And after knowing Gandalf so many years and seeing him go through a difficult situation and hearing the stories of him in Rivendell, I doubt Aragorn even considered Gandalf dying. The loss of Gandalf seems to be a death knell for the company's travels. Luckily for Aragorn, Celeborn, possibly encouraged by Galadriel, gives them an early gift of parting. "That is well," said Celeborn, "then I will furnish your company with boats. They must be small and light, for if you go far by water, there are places where you will be forced to carry them. You will come to the rapids of Sandgeber, and maybe at last to the great falls of Rauros, where the river thunders down from Nen Hithoel. And there are other perils. Boats may make your journey less toilsome for a while, yet they will not give you counsel. In the end, you must leave them in the river and turn west or east." The very next paragraph says Aragorn thanks Celeborn many times, and these boats are massive gifts. One, it will let the company travel faster. It could almost be like they didn't spend an entire month in Lorien, they could move so quickly. Two, like Celeborn says, it essentially delays the decision that needs to be made of where is everybody going. And if we look at a map here, you can see how it can be a problem. If the company goes to Minas Tirith, how are they going to get to Mount Doom from there? Going to pass through Osgiliath, which is overrun by orcs, at least on the east side. Of course, it would make more sense to maybe go east straight from the river. It's not like they have time to head to Minas Tirith, ford up a while, then go on some longer trek again to find a way into Mordor, like around the south to all the way to the east. Even though they don't exactly know how close Sauron is to moving in force, it sure feels like everyone knows they don't have that much time. Not to mention, we can all see how bad an idea it would be for the ring to go to Minas Tirith. Gandalf and Galadriel wouldn't take the ring to wield it. I think Frodo's wise enough at this point to realize that if those two feared to take the ring, then nobody else should take it. The company goes back to their beds and takes counsel. For a time, they debated what they should do and how it would be best to attempt the fulfilling of their purpose with the ring. But they came to no decision. It was plain that most of them desired to go first to Minas Tirith, and to escape at least for a while from the terror of the enemy. They would have been willing to follow a leader over the river and into the shadow of Mordor, but Frodo spoke no word, and Aragorn was still divided in his mind. There's a few things I can glean from this section that I didn't pick up on before. Most of them wanted to go to Minas Tirith. What that tells me is that those individuals don't fully understand the ring. I mean, like, how could they? But that's important. They don't have the urgency. They don't have the weight around their neck, proverbially speaking. They don't realize how it can corrupt and use people's good intentions to their own devices. They're thinking about places they can rest easy, always looking for the next pint, as it were. And the fact that neither Aragorn nor Frodo speak up should have given the others a bit of a clue. Like, it's hard to go against the majority, especially when they're right next to you. And I can almost hear Frodo's thoughts here. It's like he's back in the Shire with Sam and Pippin. He doesn't want to take them into danger. The ring is his own inheritance, and he shouldn't make anyone go with him. They should get their rest. Aragorn never responding is pretty telling too. He's the leader, and he doesn't say they should go to Minas Tirith, especially considering it was clearly his goal in the first place. Should be a clue. In the next paragraph, we learn more. Plainly, his plan was to go to Minas Tirith, believing Boromir's dream to be a summons. But now the mantle of leadership has passed to him, and he knows he can't just forsake the ring. Though the idea of walking blindly into Mordor with a halfling carrying the ring is a bit daunting. Next, we learn why your inner monologue should always stay an inner monologue. "I shall go to Minas Tirith, alone if need be, for it is my duty," said Boromir. And after that, he was silent for a while, sitting with his eyes fixed on Frodo as if he was trying to read the halfling's thoughts. At length he spoke again, softly, as if he was debating with himself. "If you wish only to destroy the ring," he said, "then there is little use in war and weapons, and the men of Minas Tirith cannot help. But if you wish to destroy the armed might of the Dark Lord, then it is folly to go without force into his domain, and folly to throw away." He paused suddenly, as if he had become aware that he was speaking his thoughts aloud. "It would be folly to throw away lives, he ended. "It is a choice between defending a strong place and walking openly into the arms of death. At least, that is how I see it. First things first." Good save, Boromir. Smooth. No one suspects a thing. But here we are starting to see the trial of Boromir really starting to take shape. Frodo reminds us in the next paragraph that though Boromir said something similar about it being folly to throw the ring away, he accepted Elrond's correction. But here, he just tries to cover it up. But remember what we've seen of Boromir so far in the book. Yes, he doesn't think much outside of Gondor, and securing his country. Yes, he believes most truly in force of arms, and the power of mighty armies and generals, namely himself. But he has been extremely helpful. Without his suggestion, they wouldn't have taken wood up the slopes of Caerthras. They wouldn't have been able to escape the snow in Caerthras. He slew wargs in Holland and orcs in Moria. He's even been very respectful of Gandalf and Aragorn's authority in the company. He hasn't tried to usurp said company. You could say he's been a little egotistical, sure, but he's essentially a prince, loved by his people and a successful general of the greatest army currently in Middle-earth. So despite what Peter Jackson showed us, he hasn't been, ogling Frodo in the ring every chance he's had. This is really the first real sign of temptation that we see in him. But it's a sobering look into what he's thinking and what's kind of festering in his mind. They get up the next morning and are greeted by elves speaking their language. Gimli is the one to pull out the comedy here. "Cram," he said under his breath, and he broke off a crisp corner and nibbled at it. His expression quickly changed and he ate all the rest of the cake with relish. "No more, no more," cried the elves, laughing. "You have eaten enough already for a long day's march." "I thought it was only a kind of cram, such as the Dale men make for journeys in the wild," said the dwarf. "So it is," they answered, "but we call it lembas, or whey bread, and it is more strengthening than any food made by men, and it is more pleasant than cram by all accounts." "Indeed it is," said Gimli. "Why, it is better than the honey cakes of the Beornings, and that is great praise, for the Beornings are the best bakers that I know of, but they are none too willing to deal out their cakes to travelers these days. You are kindly hosts." We'll talk about lembas in just a second, but first I want to point out kind of the fan service that Tolkien used here. He brings up the Beornings. Now, presumably a lot of the people reading The Lord of the Rings, especially at this time, had read The Hobbit, where Beorn is introduced. This is a great way for Tolkien to remind people that we're in the same world as The Hobbit. This may sound like kind of a ridiculous thing to say, but I know I forget sometimes the fact that the people first reading this book got to read The Hobbit, or only read The Hobbit, 15 years earlier, and that's like it. There's no Silmarillion, History of Middle-earth, Unfinished Tales, nothing to bring the whole world together. This is a great way to do it, especially when there is so many textual ruins that we're left wondering about. And we finally get to talk about lembas. Now, I don't know about you, but I get this very Cookie Monster scene in my head reading about Gimli eating the whole cake. He takes a quick nibble, face breaks into this giant smile, and just demolishes the whole thing. Now, we don't get a whole lot of information about lembas. Some bits and pieces here and there throughout the book, but it's mostly about how the characters feel about them or their experience with lembas. Luckily for me, and hopefully you, Hammond and Skull talk about it in their companion and guide us to volume 12 of the History of Middle-earth, the Peoples of Middle-earth. This food the Eldar alone knew how to make. It was made for the comfort of those who had need to go upon a long journey in the wild, or of the hurt whose life was in peril. Only these were permitted to use it. The Eldar did not give it to men, save only to a few whom they loved, if they were in great need. For it was made of a kind of corn which Yavanna brought forth in the fields of Aman, and some she sent to them by the hand of Orome for their succor upon the long march. Since it came from Yavanna, the queen, or the highest among the elven women of any people, great or small, had the keeping and gift of the lembas. The Eldar grew it in guarded lands and sunlit glades, and they gathered its great golden ears, each one by hand, and set no blade of metal to it. So lembas is not just a type of crayon that the lake men make, or, elves' version of it. It's a sacred art given to the elves by the Valar. The Long March referenced here is the migration from where the elves woke up in Cuisine all the way over to Valinor. And you can see why they didn't give it to men very much. It was closely guarded. These strains of corn are tens of thousands of years old and were touched by the light of the two trees, which in and of itself gives power to those who see or dwell under it. But we also see how important the company is at this point. I would be willing to bet, of the company, only Aragorn and maybe Legolas know about lembas. I say Legolas only maybe knew because he is Sindar, lives in the kingdom of Sindar and elves. We don't know when Orome brought the corn to the elves from Yavanna, so the Sindar may have stopped traveling by then. I don't know. And did the other elves share the corn with them? Did they teach the Sindar, or was it, too sacred, too secret? We don't really know, but it's a special thing and they don't give it out lightly. Just like the cloaks that the company has given. The elves next unwrapped and gave to each of the company the clothes they had brought. For each they had provided a hood and cloak, made according to his size, of the light but warm silken stuff that the Galadriel wove. It was hard to say of what color they were. Gray with the hue of twilight under the trees they seemed to be, and yet if they were moved or set in another light, they were green as shadowed leaves, or brown as fallow fields by night, dusk silver as water under the stars. Each cloak was fastened about the neck with a brooch like a green leaf veined with silver. "Are these magic cloaks?" asked Pippin. Looking at them with wonder, "I do not know what you mean by that," answered the leader of the elves. "They are fair garments, and the web is good, for it was made in this land. They are elvish robes, certainly, if that is what you mean. Leaf and branch, water and stone, they have the hue and beauty of all these things under the twilight of Lorien that we love. For we put the thought of all that we love into all that we make. You are indeed high in the favor of the lady. For she herself and her maidens wove this stuff, and never before have we clad strangers in the garb of our own people." I just love how the elves don't understand what the hobbits mean when they say magic. But I'll get deeper into that in just a second. Again, the company is super important because Galadriel herself made these cloaks, but Tolkien here gave us a hint at what we'll see, like with the cloaks later. The cloaks have the hue and beauty of all things in Lorien. That's why they seem to change color. They're imbued with nature. Like the elves, they're tied to Arda and have a kinship with everything there. It's exactly why they'll be almost the best armor that the company can have. Okay, but what about magic? What did I mean? And it's crazy because literally the morning of finishing up this script, I listened to the last installment of Corey Olsen's walkthrough of The War of the Jewels, History of Middle-earth, Volume 11. There is a Sindarin word which the elves in Lorien spoke, ghoul, being used mostly of secret knowledge, especially such as possessed by artificers who make wonderful things. And the work became further darkened by its frequent use in the compound morgul, black arts, applied to the delusory or perilous arts and knowledge derived from Morgoth. Now, Corey brought up an amazing point. It seems likely that the word the hobbits used for magic in their tongue, or Westron, or whatever, contained the root ghoul, which wasn't in use very much among the elves because it was mostly associated with things like Minas Morgul, or a Morgul blade, or the Morgul veil. That's why Galadriel and these elves are confused when the hobbits ask about magic. The elves don't use ghoul. As the elf says about their cloaks, they are elvish robes, certainly, if that's what you mean. It's not a thing the elves do. It's just their nature. But check out that episode of Corey's right here. It's really cool. But not only is the company outfitted with cool cloaks, they get boats. And what's in the boats? Rope. Sam is super bummed because he didn't get to see them being made. But I think even if he learned the weave of the ropes, he never would have been able to truly make ropes like these ropes. He doesn't have the innate magic of the elves, and I bet the power of Nenya has something to do with it. Probably too. I also think these cloaks are exactly where Robert Jordan got the inspiration for the warder cloaks in his Wheel of Time series. I don't know if you've read that. The part of the person they cover up blends in perfectly to what's behind them. So if they kept their hoods up and didn't move, they would essentially be invisible, which, oddly enough, is something we see in Rohan with the three hunters. As the company was practicing with the little boats, they turned a sharp bend in the river, and there, sailing proudly down the stream towards them, they saw a swan of great size. The water rippled on either side of the white breast beneath its curving neck. Its beak shone like burnished gold, and its eyes glinted like jets set in yellow stones. Its huge white wings were half lifted. A music came down the river as it drew near, and suddenly they perceived that it was a ship, wrought and carved with elven skill in the likeness of a bird. Now here's a deliberate, what else would Tolkien do, nod to the story of Arendelle again, but this time instead of a nod to Arendelle himself, Galadriel is pointing, I think, to Elwing, Arendelle's wife. In chapter 24 of the Quenta Silmarillion, Tolkien tells us of the third kinslaying at the mouths of Sirion. I think it was the third. Might have been the second, but I'm pretty sure it was the third. Thus Maedhros and Maglor gained not the jewel, but it was not lost. For Ulmo bore up Elwing out of the waves, and he gave her the likeness of a great white bird. And upon her breast there shone as a star the Silmaril, as she flew over the water to seek Arendelle, her beloved. On a time of night, Arendelle at the helm of his ship saw her come towards him, as a white cloud exceeding swift beneath the moon, as a star over the sea moving in strange course, a pale flame on wings of storm. And it is sung that she fell from the air upon the timbers of Vingalot in a swoon, nigh unto death for the urgency of her speed. And Arendelle took her to his bosom, and in the morning with marveling eyes, he beheld his wife in her own form beside him with her hair upon his face, and she slept. So Elwing, transformed by Ulmo into a great white bird, found Arendelle upon Vingalot, his ship, with the Silmaril at her breast. With the Silmaril, Arendelle was able to find Aman and plead with the Valar to help Middle-earth escape the dangers of Morgoth. Now, some of you may say, and remember back to Bilbo's song in Rivendell, saying Arendelle fashioned his ship in the likeness of a great white bird or swan. I think, and this is not canon, but I think he did that because of how Elwing arrived to him. He changed Vingalot to look like his wife before he went to battle in Calagon the Black. I don't think the scene with Galadriel's boat is like a textual ruin, though. It's something far deeper than that. It's almost like the Christianness of the Lord of the Rings. It's just something that comes out because it's so ingrained in Tolkien. Arendelle was one of the first stories that he put pen to paper. So the company sees the boat, and then they see Galadriel, but they also hear, I sang of leaves of gold, and leaves of gold there grew. Of wind I sang, a wind there came, and in the branches blew. Beyond the sun, beyond the moon, the foam was on the sea, and by the strand of Ilmarinen there grew a golden tree. Beneath the stars of Ever-Eve in Eldamar it shone, in Eldamar beside the walls of Elven Tirion. There long the golden leaves have grown upon the branching years, while here beyond the sundering seas now fall the elven tears. O Lorien, the winter comes, the bare and leafless day. The leaves are falling in the stream, the river flows away. O Lorien, too long I have dwelt upon this hither shore, and in a fading crown have twined the golden Elenor. But if of ships I now should sing, what ship would come to me? What ship would bear me ever back across so wide a sea? Whew, that is another amazing poem. This one in iambic heptameter, so stress in the second syllable with 7 stresses per line. We get a bit of a story here from Galadriel. The first 7 lines are her talking about her time in Valinor. The leaves grew when she sang, but on this side of the Sundering Sea, the next 7 lines, winter is coming when the leaves will be no more. Her land is passing on, it's dwindling. The ring has come and is going to its doom, and the world is changing. But how is she going to get back to her home, to Valinor? It's really beautiful, of course, sad story. As the swan draws alongside the company, they're invited to eat with Celeborn and Galadriel before they leave. The swan passed on slowly to the height, and they turned their boats and followed it. There in the last end of Egladil, upon the green grass, the parting feast was held. But Frodo ate and drank little, heeding only the beauty of the lady and her voice. She seemed no longer perilous or terrible, nor filled with hidden power. Already she seemed to him, as by men of later ages, elves still at times are seen, present and yet remote, a living vision of that which has already been left far behind by the flowing streams of time. This is again beautiful and sad. Tolkien really has a way with his words, obviously. The last line really does hit me though. I think this is kind of a vision or a prophetic sort of thing for Frodo. Using the word seemed triggers this for me. He sees her as already dwindling. She is becoming no more than a reflection of the power that she once was to him. He's seeing what is to come for Galadriel, and kind of for the elves overall. He's going to be the one to bring about that fading. And with that, we'll finish up part 1 of Farewell to Lorien. Next week, we'll get into the gifts Galadriel gives and how you probably want her on your Christmas list. So thank you all so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, sign up for the channel membership if you'd like to support us that way. But until next time, always remember, out in Tulip, they shall come again.